Amad Diallo is set to put pen to paper on a new 5-year contract today. No left back in January is the latest. I'll go through all the rumours around that. Casemiro has agreed a contract with the Saudi Pro League. More details coming out about Rashford's loan as AC Milan seem to be the front runners. An unexpected cash boost and a change in transfer direction to run through. All this plus more in today's rundown of all your latest Manchester United news and transfer news that will keep you right up to date with everything. Welcome to Man United Review. My name's Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video and let's jump straight into it. So let's kick off with the Amad Diallo situation. So some of you will be pleased to know that he is expected to sign a new 5-year contract today. So Manchester United have agreed terms on a new contract for Amad. He has signed a long-term deal. A club announcement is imminent and could come early as Thursday. Originally, that was broken by Rob Dawson at ESPN. Then Fabrizio Romano's given it the kind of here we go. So Amad Diallo signs a new contract at Manchester United this week. Agreement sealed. All documents have been checked and approved on both club and player sides. Higher salary, long-term deal, and Amad stays as a key part of the project. Amad Diallo's new deal at Manchester United will be valid until June 2030. Understand, no extra year option included. That's interesting. It will be signed by Amad on Thursday. Despite calls from two top clubs, even this month, Amad wanted to stay and renew at Manchester United. So some really interesting things around this. So it's going to be interesting to see the value, how much he's going to get as his kind of contract, because I think this will be the baseline for Ineos in contracts, especially for like young players as well, because we do know that we want to restructure the wage bill. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of contract he gets. Interesting that they've not done a +1 option as well. That's probably the first time for a very long time that we've done a contract without a +1. Again, that's a sign of things to come potentially with Ineos being in the building. So really interesting, but important thing on here, smash a like on the video if you're excited for Amad Diallo to be signing his new contract today. Hopefully we'll get an announcement and all the photos and everything like that as well, but it's expected it's going to be today. I'm massively excited. I think it's well deserved, and we do need to tie down someone like Amad. He's a very, very important player for us, and it's absolutely insane to me that if Ten Hag was still here, he probably would be going on a free transfer, because they offered him a contract last year and he wasn't signing it because he wasn't playing. And if you remember back, Omari Forson was getting game time ahead of Amad Diallo this time last season. So absolutely insane that if Ten Hag was still here, we'd probably be losing Amad Diallo on a free transfer. Now, new 5-year deal, and I'm massively excited. So let me know what you think about that in the comments. Let's go through some transfer news. There's been a lot of kind of noise over the last few days around, obviously, our exits, Casemiro, Rashford. We'll run through all the kind of latest on those. So let's kick off with Casemiro. So Al Nassr are continuing to push for the signing of Casemiro this transfer window. Sources in Saudi confirm Cristiano Ronaldo is pushing the CEO to sign Casemiro and believes he'll be a fantastic fit for the side. All parties involved in the deal are hoping it will move quickly. That came from Sam C, who's a good source. And then Casemiro is very close to moving to Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Sovereign Fund have practically closed the transfer. The contract with Casemiro is agreed. The club he will join will be defined later. Now, that came from UOL. UOL, very credible when it comes to Brazilian players and Brazilian news. They were the ones in the summer that were kind of saying Casemiro's wanting to stay and fight for his place at United, when some of the other mainstream media sources were suggesting that he's going to be going to Saudi Arabia. So they've been kind of very credible recently. So that's a good source saying that, you know, contract agreed with Casemiro. So that's one that could develop quite quickly and is looking likely. David Ornstein said United would like to move Casemiro and Rashford on. So Ornstein confirming, you know, that Casemiro and Rashford likely to be moved on in January. He did say the following, which we'll quickly cover here, that they said there are some suitors for Rashford in the Premier League. I think Tottenham have been linked with him as well, but United are not going to loan him to a Premier League club. Also reconfirming that Xerxes wants to stay at the club. The word from people around him is that he is not leaving. So I brought you that news the other day, but just to reconfirm, according to David Ornstein, Xerxes not going anywhere in January. And this was a bit of a kick in the teeth, because I know some of you have been asking in previous videos in the comments around Sphere Nipan. Arsenal really like him. The kind of latest on Nipan is that actually Arsenal are potentially more likely than United at the moment. Now, one of those reasons that could be came from the Muppeteers. He said that it feels like United have moved away from deals for players who aren't ready yet. So Nipan, Rig, etc., Mastantuono, all of these kind of young players that we've been linked with. Apparently, change in policy or change of direction from the club, whether that's because Dan Aswev's gone or whether it's because Amrim's come in and Amrim's kind of like, I need more ready-made players or different profile of players to what we were kind of looking at before as well, because again, the reports are we want intensity, physicality, these sort of names. So whether they're just actually having a total change in direction where, we're not going to be looking at these sort of younger players for now, or whether we're just looking at different profile of younger players, we obviously don't know at this stage. But that's a really interesting development. I kind of, for me, I like the kind of young players like that, the Naipans, the Riggs. Like, it's way more interesting to kind of research them, and it's nicer in the team to watch players like that kind of develop. But then on the flip side, I do kind of get it, because we're 13th in the league. If we keep buying younger players, it's like where do you kind of end up? Yes, in 3-4 years' time, you might be good, but we've got to still survive for those 3 and 4 years. We need to get back into Europe. We need to be competing at the top in order to get these players in as well. If we just keep sitting at 10th and 13th or wherever we're finishing it for the next 3 or 4 years, nobody's going to want to come. It's a massive snowball effect as well. So I do kind of think that actually, when you kind of analyze the squad, you've got Casemiro and Rashford potentially going. Eriksen's out of contract, whether he's going to be going this month or in the summer. Either way, he's gone by the summer. Lindelof's going to be gone by the summer as well. Johnny Evans, Tom Heaton. There's 6 players. I've probably forgotten 1 or 2 as well. You'll be that are senior pros. They're the senior professionals at Manchester United. Yes, we're still going to have players like Maguire and Bruno, but if you replace those with loads of kids, then it's going to be really difficult for them to come in and hit the ground running, because with young players, they are inconsistent. So I can kind of maybe see that they're going to be looking at more kind of experienced players. And when we say experience, not like senior players at the end of their careers, like 30-plus-year-olds. But remember back to a video I brought you before where they were saying that Mazraoui was the benchmark that they want to kind of look at. And Mazraoui's, 26, 27? So maybe they're going to be looking at kind of more like mid-20 players that are ready to come in. Who knows? But interesting kind of update as well. Let me know what you think in the comments. It'd be interesting to hear your opinion on a potential transfer shift or change in direction when it comes to recruitment. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Now, one of the other players that we've mentioned already with an exit in January, Rashford. So United are understood to be discussing internally whether a straight loan or a loan with an option or obligation is the best course of action, if indeed they allow him to leave. A permanent departure is likely to be assessed in the summer, with United aiming to raise his market value before them. So Sky is saying effectively we're just still debating whether to do a loan with an option to buy or an obligation to buy, because it's kind of hand in hand, isn't it? Because if we do an obligation to buy and then he does really well, his fee might go up, in which case we've lost out. But then on the flip side, if you do an obligation to buy and he goes away and he kind of doesn't do very well, then we've won in that kind of regard. So I think it's just kind of ironing out those sort of deals. But that will depend on the club as well, because we've not started club negotiations yet. We'll run through the rest of the news, because it's kind of like, I think Rashford's agent is speaking to the clubs, and then we'll kind of get some kind of discussions between club to club once Rashford kind of says, okay, well, I want to go here. Can we kind of negotiate there? So, but we'll bring you any updates if they come out. Sky also said that Manchester United are aware that Marcus Rashford's brother is in Milan. Formal approaches from several clubs for the player are expected. So that came after the news yesterday that I brought to you that Rashford's agent and his brother were in direct conversations with Milan. Marcus Rashford to Borussia Dortmund is now very unlikely, and AC Milan are now pushing for Marcus Rashford. That came from a good German source. Marcus Rashford is still training on his own. AC Milan are the club moving most for him. Loan with option to buy offer on the table. That came from the Muppeteers. Again, Marcus Rashford to Borussia Dortmund is very unlikely. That's the same slide. Apologies. A face-to-face meeting took place today between AC Milan and Marcus Rashford's agent. They presented their project, but no formal offer has been made yet. Nothing is advanced. That came from Fabrizio Romano. Fabrizio Romano also said the same with Juventus as well. So Juventus have had face-to-face talks with Rashford's agent and his brother. There were some links last night with Como potentially coming in for Rashford, says Fabregas, Como, and I think Rafael Varane's involved somewhere along the lines there as well. You know, they're one of the wealthiest teams in Italy because of their ownership and stuff, potentially making a move for Rashford. However, Romano has said, no, that's not, Rashford doesn't want to go to kind of Como. So all signs at the moment are Italy for Rashford. That was brought out a couple of days ago. Whether it's going to be Juventus, AC Milan. AC Milan is seen as the front runners at the moment. But you know, no smoke without fire. The fact he's training by himself, he said he wants to leave. His brother is in Italy talking to other clubs about a deal. I don't know, you know, you know, definitely going to be something that happens with Rashford, I feel, in January. But let me know what you think in the comments. Now, there was loads of news yesterday regarding Garnacho and Mainoo, which I think did get a little bit blown out of proportion. Which I covered in yesterday's video. Alex Crook was saying that Atletico Madrid are keeping tabs on Alejandro Garnacho. Manchester United would consider a sale if big money offer comes in. Melissa Reddy said that Manchester United have made it clear they are not seeking to sell Kobbie Mainoo and Alejandro Garnacho. Kobbie Mainoo has no concerns over his Manchester United future. He feels valued by the club. Kobbie Mainoo wants to stay at Manchester United despite slow progress during contract talks. So a few more kind of credible sources you know, getting involved, saying Mainoo's happy to stay. Interestingly, though, that Garnacho, you know, is still of interest to Atletico Madrid, but, you know, it is what it is regarding that. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. Let's go through the other transfer news. So Manchester United need a sale in order to meet PSG's £50 million valuation of Nuno Mendes and the player's salary. Alejandro Garnacho has come up in talks between United and PSG. Now, that came from The Independent, who actually are quite a credible source, suggesting some kind of swap deal with Garnacho and Mendes. I mean, you know, we do want Mendes. I mean, if they're asking for £50 million for Mendes, that's ridiculous. But I suppose the question is, you tell me in the comments, would you swap Mendes for Garnacho in January? Let me know down below. Go for the rest of the Mendes news, no, because there's been a couple of blows with the left back situation. So United anticipate that a deal for Nuno Mendes would be too costly in January. They are likely to delay any bid for him until this summer, when they will have more funds at their disposal. Mendes would be interested in a move to United. Now, that came from the Times, who are a good source, suggesting that Mendes in January we're being priced out of it at the moment. Now, that I look at that two ways. I always think, well, that's either negotiation tactics, whereby, you know, United are saying, yeah, we're just going to wait until the summer as a way to kind of force PSG to lower their asking price, because if you go back to the previous report, if they're asking for £50 million, we're not going to pay £50 million in January for Mendes when he's only got 18 months left on his contract. So that's either negotiation tactics to try and get PSG to lower their wage demands, or it's true, and we're not going to be going for a left back in January. And we're going to wait until the summer. That could be, you know, viable, because if the one that we want is not available in January, I don't think United are just going to buy somebody for the sake of buying somebody. They want to go for their first, second or third choices, and I don't think Kirkes is going to leave Bournemouth in January. Mendes is seen as the kind of other front runner, and Dorgu's going to cost around between 20 to 30 million as well. And as we've just mentioned in the previous kind of slides with the Muppeteers, if there's a change in transfer policy about not maybe going for more experienced players, where does that leave Dorgu as well? Because he's only 19, I think he's 19. Off the top of my head, might be 20, but he's not an established player anyway. So there's all that to kind of think about. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. Nuno Mendes is very interested in joining Ruben Amorim at Manchester United. PSG are not overly worried. They see this as the usual game of contract negotiations. New talks will take place soon between PSG and Mendes' representatives. That came from Santi, who's a fairly credible source. You know, PSG calm about it. So him staying at PSG can't be ruled out at the moment as well. Samuel Lucker said that Manchester United are not actively targeting Nuno Mendes this month. United are expected to be in the market for a left-back in the summer. And he also said that Manchester United have not ruled out, though, the possibility of signing Kolo Muani on loan. There's another story I'll go for in a second regarding Muani, but just to kind of summarise the left-back situation, it's going to be really frustrating if we don't get a left-back in January. But then I do see the kind of argument that if the one that we want is not available, why would we waste money in January getting a left back in that you don't actually want long term, because you're tying him to a contract, you can't sell them on, so you've got to commit to because we need a first choice left back. It's not like we're looking for a backup or a rotation option or anything like that. We need somebody that's ready-made to come in and take that spot. So you need to get that right. You need to get that right, because if you go half-assed and you're like, okay, well, we can't get this player, so we're going to go for this player instead, in a year's time, you might be in a position where you're like, actually, he wasn't what we thought he was. Can we now need another one? And you're just wasting more and more money. So I do see that argument. But then also on the flip side, I could see that being negotiation tactics as well. So we're just going to have to wait and see. I'll keep an eye on it for you. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let's go through the rest of the transfer news. Obviously, I brought it to you then. So Manchester United have not ruled out the possibility of signing Kolo Muani on loan. So no real further updates on the Muani deal. Juventus have been linked with him. There was a lot more noise yesterday about potentially Juventus being ahead in the game to try and get Muani. Obviously, there was talk about, an obligation to buy, PSG wanting an obligation to buy and stuff as well. So, that's one that we're kind of keep an eye on. But as it stands at the moment, no real further updates on the Muani deal. Now, this was an interesting kind of player. So Manchester United are keeping an eye on PSG's Lee Kang in. That would be a great shout. Italian journalist, fairly decent, but not the most credible. I would want way more credibility before getting too excited. But what a good shout. Great player. Can play, he's a versatile player, can play as a 10, can play out wide, can play in midfield. Actually played one game up front as well, because PSG don't want to play Muani. That says it all about what PSG feel about Muani that we might be getting on loan. Left-footed, great passer, great vision, 23 years old. 24 appearances, 6 goals, 2 assists this season. So he's a really interesting profile of player that I could kind of see fitting in the system, because he could play him in midfield. You could play him as one of the 10s on the left or the right. Really creative. Yeah, great. Would be a really interesting option. Interesting, we're linked with loads of PSG players, isn't it? I wonder if that's something to do with Blanc that's came in, because obviously he was at PSG. Could be something in that. But yeah, let me know what you think about that in the comments. And let's run through some of the other news. So Christian Eriksen is now expected to leave Manchester United this month. That came from Dean Jones, who's a decent source, but not always credible, not always the best. Casemiro going and Eriksen, we'd have to get a midfielder in if those two go, and especially if this next story is true as well, where Toby Collier's open to a move to a championship club this month if a suitable offer emerges from Samuel Luckhurst. If we get Eriksen, Casemiro and Collier going, we're going to need midfielders, and I don't necessarily think we've got time in January to go and get 1 or 2 midfielders unless he's going to promote somebody else from the youth team. There were photos yesterday of a few other young players coming training with the first team, so that could be an option. But if Eriksen goes and Casemiro goes, we're definitely going to need at least 1 midfielder coming in. I would argue to say 2, especially if Collier goes out on loan as well. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. And Luke Shaw is looking good in his rehab movement and running well. He is on track to be back around the end of this month. That came from United Menace, for those that are interested in, Luke Shaw coming back. I mean, yeah, great, but how long is he going to stay fit for? That's always the problem with Luke Shaw, isn't it? It's how long is he going to stay fit for? Do you know what I mean? He's made 3 substitute appearances in 12 months, practically. So I'm going to assume he won't be back for very long, and that's the problem. That is the problem with Luke Shaw. But let me know what you think in the comments. And then finally, Palmeiras have raised their offer for Andreas Pereira to £20.8 million, an amount Fulham likes. Now, that came from South American journalist who's quite decent. The reason that's important for us is a bit of a sneaky boost, because we have a 20% sell-on clause, so we could be in line to receive an additional £4.2 million if that transfer goes through. Obviously, that's not enough to go out and buy Mendes in January, but it is still helpful for PSR to pay somebody's wages. Do you know what I mean? So that's a unexpected potential boost in transfer income if Pereira goes, and the reports are that that's looking possible this month as well. So that could be something that could be used to go in towards, I don't know, a loan fee or some wages or something like that for a player if we're going to get them in January. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. Let me know what you think about all the other topics discussed in today's video, because that's you all up to date with the latest Manchester United news and transfer news. Don't forget to smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. See you in the next one.